before we get started, do me a favor, introduce yourself.
Yeah, Emil Sayegh. I've been here in Austin since 1986, and I've been CEO of 3 different companies here in the Austin area, all in the data center space, managed services space, cybersecurity. So been a CEO for the last 12 and a half years, and just recently took a sabbatical, and I'm doing a little bit of consulting here and there with different companies, helping them with their growth challenges and helping them, just kind of figure out, what their path is like. There's a lot of changes in the industry, and so it's been great. It's been fun.
Man, this is awesome. I'm so happy to have you on here because there's a lot of parts about this podcast that talk about, there's so much in this industry, right? As I'm bringing on new employees, I'm always trying to explain to them a high level, like, hey, there's different types of grocery stores. There's Costco, there's the local grocery chain that you go to, and then there's the convenience stores. And there's like a technology model that fits that. Managed services and what you were doing. I think I met you, if it was 4 years ago, it might as well have been a dozen years ago in this industry, but it was a long time ago.
It was a long time. It's a lot more than 4.
Yeah. But we were hunting, I think.
We were hunting.
Yep. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, there's another guy, Eric Jacobs at Align Data Centers. Uh-huh. He's a pretty unassuming redneck too, right? Like when you look at him, he could literally be on the cover of GQ magazine. And you know what we're talking about, EJ. What I'm saying is, like, I went hunting with him one time. I'm like, you should be on the cover of Duck Dynasty is what you should have been on, right? Awesome guy, but you're a little bit unassuming like that too, where we were hunting and we were out there and you were just as redneck as the guys that we were with too. And I was like, all right, this is my type of guy. We're going to have a great weekend. So we were smacking hogs, I think, all weekend, right?
Yeah.
I think
I almost got a divorce that weekend. I came back with 7 hogs. So proud. Came back and my wife was like, no, like, what are we going to do with these things? 7 of them, like, 1 is okay too, but 7. Yeah.
She's like, you
can
feed the family. Yeah. Those are the fun hunts. I mean, people don't know that in Texas. People that aren't for hunting don't realize in Texas, it's the only thing you don't even need a license to hunt.
Correct.
There's no living on them because just the way in which they procreate, right? But for you and I to talk, you've spoken to DCAC in the past, right? And we've been at conferences before. We've gone back, but I'd like to, before we get into the elements of technology, that I've never really got into managed services that much on this podcast. I focused on power or AI or, emerging technologies that are going to shift the demand level to the point where it triggers a usage of nuclear. But I want to unpackage you a little bit if I can, because you've had your own podcast. You know how this game goes, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I want people, I think that we'll be able to entertain some people with some of our jokes and stories and questions, but I also want them, there's people that are going to be inspired by your story and there's people that are going to be educated because of it, right? So tell me where you originally came from and how you got in this game. Can you start with that? Because
sure,
I want to
childhood?
Yeah, I mean, like, where are you from?
Yeah. So I was born actually in the country of Lebanon, overseas.
How long ago?
I came to the States in 1986.
86.
Yeah. So I know a lot of your audience is ex-military, veterans, military. So, this is during the darkest days of the civil war in Lebanon. This is right after the Marine barracks explosion and, the country Beirut bombing. So, and while I was growing, I was a little kid and I became friends with a lot of these Marines and a lot of the military personnel that was there from the U.S. Because they were patrolling the streets. They were patrolling where my dad worked at the American University. So we became friends. And then shortly after that, there was the Marine barrack bombing. And then, the whole U.S. Navy had a full fleet deployed there. So the 6th Fleet, I think there was a Eisenhower battle group and, multiple nuclear submarines actually were also deployed. So that was a defining moment. And then shortly after that, I left the country. It became very dangerous for me and for my family, kidnappings and killings and so on and so forth. So I came here to start my my college education. So I went to University of Texas here in town. And
how did you pick UT? Out of
man.
I mean, because it's just like Beirut, I guess, right? I mean, like, no, but I mean, Lebanon. Do you find good Lebanese food here in Austin? Have you done?
No. Other than what we cook at home, yeah, it's not very good. Yeah, Houston has a lot, but not in Austin.
I've noticed that. Yeah.
So you need to come over to my place then. So,
I'm in.
Yeah. You need to come to my place.
So how did you pick UT? I noticed you wear burnt orange even today. So like.
So how did I pick UT? I had family in Houston, like on my mom's side, and then Texas was, a very good mechanical engineering school. So I went to, I became a mechanical engineer, and I had looked at A&M, looked at Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and I got accepted to all of them, but then I picked Texas. It was, the closest to family, I would say. Yeah. So, very, very good school at the time. So
there's several powerful people in this industry that have come from UT. A couple of them have been on this podcast, like Chris Crosby's UT. Chris, I'm sure. Cameron of Element Critical now. I'm sure you know him. Yeah. So like there's, I even have one Mackenzie Edwards on my team. She's a UT Savage too, right? So they have she went to the architectural school, like 5-year program. Amazing program. Yeah. I mean, the school itself has produced a lot of strong leaders. The always big joke in this state, as you probably know, is what do you call someone in Texas who went to Texas A&M? You normally call him boss. That's what they say. So for the longest time, I used to talk trash because I'm like, I never run any UT people that are in this industry that are leaders. And then, I mean, your CEO right down the road, Chris is one right up the road.
Right.
There's plenty of talent. I just like to talk trash to UT when I'm here sometimes. But you picked that school, good school, and then you got into mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
And then how did you get into the technology game from that?
So I started my career really being an engineer, working in developing electronic products for a company called W.L. Gore and Associates. So we did a lot of, I would say, electronic products design. So
it's
I
like
actually
got 90s stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I actually got received 9 patents. So
really?
Early on in my career, and then a lot of them for military use. So we were developing these towed the electronics for these towed bodies behind ships, essentially
towed arrays.
Yeah, exactly. Towed arrays, and also we extrapolated that for airplanes as well. Was
where were you guys getting? Is it the Pickle Foundation? Like the JJ Pickle Foundation was the big think tank here in town. Is that where you? Because they were sucking
Naval Research Labs. Boeing was big into it as well, and actually I got to fly into a old 707, and we deployed a decoy from the back of the. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. They were testing those to kind of decoy, actually an active decoy that's transmitting, right, and is being tethered behind an airplane, and is to essentially create a signal bigger than that of the airplane, so that they can lure the surface to air.
Does it serve like a traditional pyrotechnic? I guess would be shot out of it to like get something else to go shoot that instead of it. Is it kind of the same principle?
Exactly the same principle.
Okay, got you.
Yeah.
So you, that's some nerdy stuff. How long did you do that for?
I did that for about 5 years, and then I kind of figured out that I'm really good at that stuff. I love it, but I'm also good at. I didn't know much about business, if you will, or going and putting business plans and launching products and launching. I didn't know much about that, but I kind of did it as I went. I read a lot of books, and then I became really good at it. I became really, really good at it. And then one of the things that I would say,
because there was really no schooling for that. You were just you had to have passion to understand that.
Yeah.
This is probably mid to late 90s, I'm guessing.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Back then, like, let's see, Amazon launched this website in 1994, right? Amazon.com went live. Yeah. So that means, in theory, this industry was 30 years old from the time that Amazon went live, which is kind of what was the biggest cannonball to start this game. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in that point, there was no industry. There were nobody to call. There was no classrooms. There were, there was no degrees for this. There was nothing except everybody was going through the same apprenticeship at once. Yeah. And that was you. And you were kind of figuring out if you're going to be, you went hybrid from engineering and started getting more into the business side.
Yeah.
And that got you into the MEP infrastructure?
Well, it got me into really figuring out how to launch products, how to manage products, how to make them profitable, and then, by the way, at the time, we were still supplying a lot of electronic products for Cray computers, because those were the data centers, these are the supercomputers, cooled. I mean, just unbelievable proprietary systems. So, but this is kind of how I got into it. I went to compact computers actually after that. And then I went to a small startup that's called RLX Technologies. And this is going to be, this is now 2001, right before the .com.
Did Compaq have a big presence here? Did you have to go to Houston?
I had to go to Houston.
And then were you there when they got acquired by HP?
No.
Okay, so you left before that.
I was there when right before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was Wade Vincent there at Compaq with you? The Podfather at HP. He's at NVIDIA now, but he's doing one of our he's one of the keynote speakers for DCAC this year.
That's awesome.
But I knew that he was there at Compaq prior to the HP. I figured you guys
the acquisition.
Bunch of nerds there back then.
Yeah, right? I was there when we acquired Tandem, when Compaq acquired Tandem Computers, which had an office here, right there, by Wells Branch, if you know where that is. Yeah. Now it's an HP campus there. Yeah.
So the industry was just evolving. I mean, they didn't even really call it data centers probably back in those days. This is before the .com bust?
Yeah. Well, no, they called them data centers actually. So I went to this small little startup called RLX Technologies. And, this is going to be 180 for a lot of people. But the shtick there, the value proposition was developing server blades. This is 2001, 2002, server blades, the first server blade ever, using though a cool chip made by Transmeta, which was made for laptops, low power. This is during
cold plate technology in 2001 you're talking about?
Absolutely, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they were using it for laptops, and then low power consumption. And then, then you had all the brownouts in California, if you remember. And, all the data center industry was just, going up during the .com boom. And then, we came in right time, we had a, big backlog. We were selling to all the Exoduses of the world.
Yes, I remember Exodus.
There you go.
Yeah. There was like Exodus, Savvis was that in those days too. Remember?
Exactly. Yeah. And we tried to sell to Rackspace. Rackspace was just starting, and then Rackspace would just give us the Heisman. But because they were doing white boxes, if you remember, Rackspace was just doing these big towers and stacking them on bread racks and so on and so forth.
So that was my first time walking into a Rackspace data center, was the bread racks. And they were just like old towers. Old towers is what they were using.
Yeah, they were.
I was like, are they going to garage sales to get these things? Obviously, like that was in their earliest days, so they were scrappy. This is long before they were the monster that they are now. But I remember those old days because I remember going to, I'm not going to name the data center where it was at, but I remember where it was at.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I'm sure it's nothing at all like that now, but the old days, I remember those days. Yeah. Go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
No, but so RLX kind of gave me the view into the challenges of data centers. And it's still the same one as it is today, as we're probably going to talk about, we're talking about before we started, is power. Yeah. I mean, the issue was power back then, and still is power. This is why we went with these low power chips. And ultimately the company got acquired by HP and so on and so forth. But the issue is that, the challenges are bigger, the applications are different, but it's still the same. It's still the same fundamental challenge.
I agree with everything you just said. I think the only thing that's truly different now is the first time where we're looking over the cliff of where the end of power begins. Does that make sense? Because for the longest amount of time, do you remember a cell phone time? Do you remember they used to count the minutes, right? And those days are gone because they're like, look, and it's all a data game now. And now you could look at what we're doing and it's almost going to shift to another commodity type of model and how we're doing it, because we'll have to start governing how much compute capacity people get relative to the volume of power that the compute capacity they demand requires, right? From a space, power, and water or cooling perspective, right? So we are, I think there was some information in the last Goldman Sachs report I read where it showed how we were pretty stabilized with the utilization of power in this industry for a dozen years, and it's probably true, but I think simultaneously what happened was Christian Bellotti wrote PUE and all of us started adapting PUE. Remember when that was very new, but imagine what it did for let's say it didn't cut the waste of energy in half. I bet you it tripled the amount of waste. You know what I'm saying? It probably, how many people were running around at a 3.5 unity or 3.5 power factor. Sure. Now they're hovering closer to unity type of thing, right? So there was a lot of waste, and we got smarter because we now had a benchmarking metric to measure everything against that could standardize throughout the industry. So we got more efficient while demanding more, and it looked more like a flat line as a result of that. Right. And all of a sudden you saw that we went from 2 to 3% of utilization on industry power, and it looks like it's going to triple between now and 2030, which is 5.5 years away. So power remains the problem. The only difference is now you're going to see us not being able. We never looked at power as a limiting factor, and now we look at the volume of magnum amount of power that we have to get, the magnitude of the power that we need to get. I should say, it is so great that the amount of carbon that it would emit would make it impossible for us to reach at based on the current linear trending, unless we shift basically our entire economy from oil and gas and fossil fuels to nuclear, right?
Or something.
It's got to be something that's safer, more sustainable,
absolutely,
and scalable. Because right now, even if we could go to all the pockets in the United States where we could find more natural gas and get produce more solar or wind, even then, it's still not enough to meet the requirements of AI and the demand of that. So I think that's what's going to force us as consumers to getting a little bit more. We're now going to start having to deal with limitations. We've never had to budget ourselves on how much IT. We had unlimited. I could scroll unlimited. I could do all these things unlimited. What happens when you find out that you have a limited amount of that stuff?
Absolutely.
Because limited power means limited IT, right? And people haven't tied that together yet. I'm hoping that you could help me unpackage that because.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's the issue, is that we're going to have to do one or three things. One of them is not going to be very desirable, is that we're going to have to charge for AI compute cycles more, right? The $20 a month that you pay to ChatGPT is not going to pay for that expensive NVIDIA chip. Or, I mean, every AI query, it consumes 10 times more power than a Google query.
Than a Google search,
so, anyway. So, having said that, I don't think anybody's going to do that because that's going to stunt.
When's the last time anyone stopped using technology? Their adoption rate is only emerging.
Exactly. So that's not going to happen. The second thing is that, can NVIDIA and the chip manufacturers, figure out chips that are more power efficient? I mean, certainly, but that's going to take years. That's a decade-long quest, and I think demand is always going to outpace it. So let's just, I'm just going to going through unpacking it, as you said. Third one is that could the algorithm be smarter? Could we fine-tune the algorithms? I think a lot of people are working on that to kind of be less power consuming and smarter, where you're caching things locally, where you do kind of like an AI query once, right? And then, you have it cached locally, and then you're just kind of querying that database basically. And then only for the delta, you're going back up. So, I mean, I think from a software standpoint, we can do stuff like that. But again, that's going to take a while. I think the fourth thing is that we have to figure out how to generate clean power that is sustainable. And this is where, nuclear comes in. We're clean nuclear. We can do it. This is not beyond our human capabilities. We run nuclear submarines
for 75 years.
75 years.
The nuclear Navy, 75 years.
75 years.
And it's got. They'll never probably release the number of small modular reactors they have, but they have probably more than 1,000 that have been in production that we've never once heard about a single issue, an incident with. And it's funny how much footprint and topology that volume or that massive aggregate of power is relative to what we do now. It's just, I think that there's some things at play. There's a lot of companies that have a lot of money to be made still. I mean, look, they have technology in the phones that is 10 years ahead of what we're using right now, but why would they roll it out when they can still make money on the Model 14, 15, 16 and iterate, So I think that it's just, we, the consumers, will eventually demand. I think technology itself is going to be the solution because the technology, as we're learning, is giving us more visibility and more transparency into the greater challenges in society.
Yeah.
Right. So we kind of know which media that is more of a propaganda machine than anything. We know which ones are maybe, I wouldn't say healthy or unhealthy, but I mean, do you remember I grew up, I was born during the third industrial revolution. I was telling people on my team this the other day, they're Gen Zers. And I was like, when I was growing up, not only would you drive by the billboards and still see Marlboro habits, but you can see that there was commercials. Remember, 4 out of 5 doctors would agree that you could smoke Camel Lights over Marlboro Lights or something like that. It was one of those two. But there was also a cigarette that existed that was a asthma cigarette. So if you were someone that had asthma, they had a special cigarette just for you. But those days are over.
How about the cool one for the ladies? Like, right?
The marketing that they did.
Yeah,
I mean, all the TV shows, all that stuff's gone. I mean, there's so many changes. I mean, I grew up in the third industrial revolution where there was this massive explosion after the feminine movement that really wanted to make it easier for women to join the workforce. And the best way to do that is to create convenient foods like TV dinners and a lot of processed foods and then a lot of fast food, right? And I think that looking back on society, we probably wouldn't have adopted it as society did. It's always too hot, too cold before it's just right. But now if you look at it, people going into McDonald's sometimes probably get the same level of respect from their neighbors as they do the person walking down the street smoking a cigarette. One day, technology will probably have a very similar. We will begin to use technology in a healthier, more harmonious way. So there will be some consumer contraction, but I think the limitations that we're becoming more aware of in technology are going to be one of the things that makes people wake up.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
100%. Absolutely.
Well, how did you look? I want to talk a little bit about the concept of managed services too.
Okay? Yeah.
And then one of the things I asked you about is remember, I was like, hey, man, can you explain to me what happened in the world last week from a technology basis? Because for those of us that are in the data center side, there's really two sides. I always explain this industry upstream and downstream. Okay. So anybody that's listening, tell me if you disagree with this. And I'm not over trivializing this industry, but sometimes when people get into this industry, it's daunting, right? Like there's so many elements of technology. So I try to codify it or put a construct around it to where people that are coming in can maybe try to identify it, right? So I always take the data center industry and I cut it in half. There are servers, storage, networking, and software. Those are the IT infrastructure groups. HP, Compaq, 3PAR, 3POM, Tipping Point, you name it. People that make network switches and racks or just storage device. That's the IT infrastructure. And then you have a lot of software and services around it. Park that right here. And this is what I'm laying this out like this. It's going to dovetail back into managed services, right? Because I'm a caveman. I'm a sailor. So I had to break it down in a way in which I could understand it. So I take server, storage, networking, and software, all the things you'd put in your laptop or in your server. And that's what the farm of technology is. Park it right there. But that requires, like your laptop, power. It requires a network to get onto the internet, and it's going to require some hardware and some software, but it's going to create heat because it has power, and then you have to reject that heat, so it's going to have a little fan on it or something. So we're just building it at a much more bigger scale, right? When I take the IT infrastructure, server, storage, networking, software, put it over here. Over here, I have the MEP infrastructure. That's the space, the power, and cooling of the building. The 4 walls, the roof, and whatever it takes to make it bulletproof so that all the IT inside of there doesn't go down. The traditional pull-through rate was about 1 to 10. For every $1 I spent on the MEP infrastructure, I spent about 10 on the IT. Was that about right?
Yeah.
Rough strokes. It's obviously a competition in certain markets and it's market dependent. But if I take those two areas, now I have just a co-location provider that's providing any color you want as long as it's black. They create a vanilla environment for any enterprise end user to roll into and have space, power, and cooling. To rent a tenant, it's a hotel. Instead of renting suites to people, they're renting suites to companies to park their own IT. People that don't want to rent a suite and park their own IT in there, they're going to probably go to a managed service model, right? And that's how I was exposed to managed services. And then I want you to help me understand how you understood managed services and how you got into that, because like you were at Codero and then Hostway and Entirety. And these are players, big players, global players in the space, right? And you're iterating in managed services. So as people are understanding this industry, like realize if you're on IT infrastructure, you're where the servers and storage, networking, and software is. That's over on this side. You're doing all this technology services as a service.
Correct.
All right. So you're taking all that, just like instead of an on-prem data center where you have to spend your money and your capital on building something, investing into it, and then maintaining it. They're creating the building as a service, and they're just outsourcing the building as a service. So you're where the true services of the industry combined.
Yes.
So your demand on power has a ripple effect on the infrastructure of both sides. So for those that didn't understand that, because there's going to be some people that just got in the game a year ago, right? And there's people like us that have been in the game for 20 plus years, right? So walk people through how you were kind of there during the genesis, because managed services, as the way it stands today, did not exist in an industry when you first started at it.
Yeah.
So walk me through that iteration. And the reason why I ask you is it's important for people to understand that unlike every other industry that we talk about, if this was healthcare or law or manufacturing, retail, those are very sophisticated industries that were built during the first, second, third, or fourth industrial revolution. Ours is started in the fourth industrial revolution and will hit mainstream in fifth, right? And for us, all those other industries were kind of something that we learned from what worked for one thing worked for the other. Every industrial revolution was led by one theme, and that's power. The first industrial revolution was steam engine. The second was AC and DC power with the automobile. The third was nuclear energy. The fourth was AI, the genesis of AI, and AR and VR and autonomous driving vehicles and drone tech. And now we're in quantum, right? Now, what are we going to do? We add all four of those utilities together and we have a data center, the fifth utility.
Right.
How does managed services play into that? And then at some point when we're done, I want to know what happened last week, because you speak that language deeper than I do.
Oh, yeah. I can tell you all about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now that you understand how I want to frame it, unload on me any way you got.
So that was 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Not last week.
Whatever it was, a couple weeks ago.
It was a Friday, right?
Yeah, it was like a major traffic day too, a travel day. All these planes were shut down.
Yeah. So here's the essence of managed services. There's companies that don't have the wherewithal to go and find data center space, lease it, make sure that they have the right racks, power it, make sure that they put the right networking equipment, architect that network equipment, and then put their servers, and then have the personnel to manage it. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that don't have the wherewithal.
A lot of risk with all those components. The technology is
exactly. They don't have the team. They don't have the wherewithal. You got an IT guy, maybe. Sometimes you got a CTO that has a bunch of developers that have developed this amazing piece of software or whatnot, and they just want to be able to use compute as a utility, just like they use electricity.
Yeah,
they just don't want to have to worry about it, and then they want to use compute as compute as utility, though. Exactly, and then, but that comes with complexity. I mean, it's not a utility, as we know, right? They want it to be a utility, but somebody needs to be on top of it, to make sure that data is secure, to make sure that we're going to come back to that. The servers are properly patched.
Right.
I'm going to repeat that. The servers are properly patched. It's unsexy, but patching is a major part of what managed services provider do. They keep all those servers up to date and up to snuff. They keep the firewalls with the latest security patches as well, so that they're protecting the underlying infrastructure, and then on and on and on. The storage, make sure that it's redundant, make sure there's a disaster recovery, make sure that we are also exercising the disaster recovery, meaning that we're doing monthly exercises, weekly exercises, whatever, right? To make sure that in case of a disaster, we're able to recover from backup or a snapshot or whatnot. So those are all the things that managed services.
Are those IT infrastructures that they're getting as a service? Are those dedicated only to them, or is it a shared dedication of infrastructure like a cloud?
Sure, it's both.
Okay.
So you have both flavors. You have customers that come in and say, well, I want everything dedicated to me. This is a private cloud to only them. Right. We could build a data center. a server cluster for them in the data center. Put VMware on top of it, or OpenStack, or whatever it is that we want to do. Then layer security, create a disaster recovery plan, and then offer that as a service specifically dedicated. You'll see that a lot with companies that are in healthcare or fintech that are compliance oriented. They just want all their data to be isolated from everybody else. Now, then you have the other side of customers. They're like, well, we would compromise on that for cost, right? And then we would go with shared infrastructure, right? We would share a cloud with other people, right? And that's kind of where essentially the cloud came along. But anyway, regardless, all these things still need to be patched. They need to be monitored. they need to have backups. They need to have disaster recovery. Somebody needs to essentially respond very quickly when they need to scale, because they need to scale sometimes in a matter of minutes, in a matter of hours. It's not days. They can't wait till we have a new build out of a data center.
Sure.
It's
on demand.
It's on demand, exactly. And this is where the managed services providers come in.
So you're supposed to have like an unlimited amount of that fabric at any time when they want it on demand.
Yeah. And then there's no such thing as unlimited. So you're juggling.
Well, for them, they're like, don't tell me about the pain. Just show me the
Turn
baby.
it on. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So how long ago do you think that part of the industry it didn't break off, it broke in, and it became a very specialized niche? I mean, look at Rackspace, right? I mean,
for sure.
They went from did you work there, by the way? I never got
I was like, there,
we stopped because
so RLX did a stint at Dell, and then at Dell I was doing actually services and managed services as well, and kind of launched that business inside of Dell. But then I went to Rackspace, and this is the time. So there was a gap between, I would say, 2002 to 2006. I joined in 2006. Rackspace was still small at the time.
Did they still own the mall down in San Antonio by then?
No, that's before the mall. Even way before the mall. We were in a location called Data Point, on a road called Data Point. Data Point used to be an old IT company, like mainframe kind of a company. Sure. that was there, and then Rackspace went into their location. So the street is still there. I was in San Antonio this last weekend dropping off my son. He's just started medical school, actually. So nice. Data Point is still there. I mean, that street is still there. So they were in that Data Point building, just really rundown building, honestly. We still laugh about it. All the ex-Rackers still laugh about it. But anyway, so Rackspace defined what is known as managed hosting.
Yes.
There was no such thing as managed hosting, because Rackspace started as a co-location provider. They had these data centers, and then they would rack servers in them and stuff like that. And then they said, well, there's this other niche where we could provide a service, and it is potentially more lucrative. I mean, the downside of that is that you're having to buy the equipment.
Yeah, it's data center as a service.
Yeah,
it's data center as utilities. You
exactly
kind of described it, and that's what we're talking about now. Is the fifth utility, where if you add up plumbing, electricity, connectivity, and gas, it's still just a data center, right? Just on a more mainstream or commercial. But that part of the industry, I remember. I mean, you and I were talking. I remember working on that big program in Grapevine, and I remember Justin Timberlake tweeting something because some guy had a seizure while driving and hit that transformer. Yes. He flew over the berm in the truck, and I remember. I mean, we were building Rackspace data centers, but I didn't know who Rackspace was. I didn't even know who the clients were, but I remember going to their buildings, and they were a pirate. I mean, they literally were the island of misfit toys. Rackspace was, right? I mean, they were the cool data center companies that always had the pool tables and the dartboards, and they had a cool culture. And there was a time, I don't think, for the longest time, they had to have been the first mover's advantage, or had a lot of the growing momentum advantage,
Absolutely. And then, because it's a service, the industry had like a reputation for terrible service. Like they would have our competitors would have outages and nobody cares. With Rackspace, you would have an outage and then people would be fighting each other on how to help the customer, right? I mean, that was the culture. It was a customer-centric culture. And then somebody coined the fanatical support. So like, oh, this is fanatical. I mean, the way you guys support customers is absolutely fanatical. And then it became fanatical support, kind of took off because the competitors really kind of looked at it as a technology play, not as a services play, not as a human play, right? Whereas Rackspace really took the opposite tact, and they said, well, look, we're in San Antonio. And, this is not necessarily the hub of tech. Everybody was telling them, what are you doing? Running a tech company in San Antonio, you need to move to the West Coast. And then Rackspace leadership, us all included, said, absolutely not. Like, this is the place where we can get a lot of, customer focused people. Yeah. San Antonio is full of that, the San Antonio, Austin corridor. And then, we would hire people, that we would meet. We had a lot of veterans, and that had that fanatical culture, that knew. Yeah,
it's like cultish. You want that. You want everyone to want to be in, and you want people that feel like. Yes, I remember going there multiple times and vividly almost being envious of, I worked for, at the time I was probably at HP, and I was like, man, it's like the size of the US Navy. You feel almost as significant, and you're making a difference to something, at least in the Navy, and the side of the work that you could be on the big box company. Sometimes you're really not there to be inspired. You're there to learn, learn how to do it from an industry indicative best practice, because, startups and stuff like that are so unstable in how they do things, where you do want to know how to do things the right way before you kind of got to be the same before you can be different in some ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised. So a bunch of people kind of busted out of Rackspace probably and started spinning up, other iterations of that same thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's kind of like essentially what happened. I launched a public cloud over there at Rackspace, launched, the technology that was behind OpenStack, actually, which became kind of like the open source public cloud. And then, from there, Cadero, Hostway, and then we formed Entirety by merging Hostway and Hostway.
Did you and John Martis like swap roles or something like that?
Yes.
You guys were, I'm only joking, but like I remember you guys were both. I remember talking to one of you guys. I'm like, shit, I must have put that in my contacts wrong. And then one day he was at Hostway or something like that, and then
right.
You're at Hostway. And I forget what it was, but you guys probably knew each other, ran into each other.
We've known each other, yeah.
For sure.
John is a great guy. Yeah, he lives down the street here. So yep, he's a great guy. And I had just left Cadero to go to Hostway. And then John had taken kind of like a little bit of sabbatical after he left Hostway. And then,
Those managed services jobs, when you're the captain of those ships, it seems like you need a little bit of a break when you're done, because it seems like it's so much more kinetic, because it seems like it's a greater fight at sometimes. You guys were battling a little bit harder than those wholesalers guys were, because they were negotiating 9-month-long deals, where you guys were sometimes, it seems like the energy was just different, the way that those purchasing decisions are made,
Yeah, it's definitely a 4-dimensional puzzle, I would say. Like literally, it's a 4-dimensional puzzle, because, one is that you're not immune from the fact that you are actually laying out a lot of capital. You're still doing long-term leases, 12-year leases, 15-year leases on data centers. You're still buying equipment, which is a lot of CapEx, right? So you still have to borrow.
Very dense.
So that's one side. And then also you have to hire. You have to hire the right people, because, your culture is everything. And then you have to deliver a service that is impeccable to your customers, right? And so you're balancing CapEx and then how to manage money on this side. And then you're also being very selective how to hire people. And then you're productizing something that people are used to doing themselves, and they always think that they can do it better.
So you're competing
against internal IT. Yeah. You're competing against internal IT, like the internal IT of.
It's like, I don't need this. I can do it myself. I do it on like recruiting. We do a lot of recruiting. People are like, oh, I have recruiters. I'm like, well, if they're not getting it done, like we can move the needle, right? But that's hard, right? Because I think that there's going to be a phase where a lot of things, I think that you'll have people that are more intentional and deliberate in the way that they stack an ELT or an SLT or an LT or whatever they're going to call their leadership team.
Sure.
But typically most companies that are, if they've arrived at a certain growth part where they're trying to scale, they're going to have a succession plan of leadership throughout the growth. And I think that if you look at that, there are some companies that we've talked to that are in this game, that are guys that came from big box companies, or they worked for larger, hyper data center owner operators like publicly traded REITs, and they are going out and finding capital partners that want to get in the game, and they're starting, XYZ is a bad name because there's actually an XYZ in this space, but there are groups and they're kind of starting over from zero. Does that make sense? But they're using years of advanced knowledge of how they got to certain things. And those groups have come up. One of them in particular we've talked to, they're like, we are very seriously looking down a path of having our 3 levels of leadership teams. And then beyond that, everything is outsourced as a service. Mm-hmm. Every employee. I mean, some of the largest operators outsource all their operations now to JLL or CBRE or something like that. Mm-hmm. But there's got to be more alternatives, right? And I'm watching, it used to be roles that were more CapEx heavy because they didn't want to hire on people for construction projects. And then all of a sudden that project's over and they're not going to build for a few years. So what are we going to do with that person? But now I'm seeing them like, I think that what's happening is the industry is growing so aggressively and it's growing so quickly that sometimes these companies don't have time to train and grow and mentor their employees to where when they grow to a point as a business where they need a different level of output or productivity from that employee, they will rip out and replace that employee with someone who has that skill set, because it's easier to do that than to try to train them up to get into that. Mm-hmm. And I think those removals and those changes are what has the ultimate negative impact on culture, so that you have to figure out what is the desire of culture is important for everybody, but how important, mm-hmm. Or what mm-hmm. level, what's that balance? What does it supersede? And I think that what we'll see is we don't have enough talent in the space already, right? We're hundreds of thousands of people short for talent in this vertical, and that's before the silver tsunami, right? So you've been in this space for more than 20 years. I've been here for more than 20 years. There's a lot of us that have been in this industry for more than 20 years, and a lot of people that came to this industry had already done a full career at another one before they got here.
Yeah.
Right. So now you have, let's say what happens is we're staring down the barrel of another election cycle. I would imagine you're not going to hear a lot about AI and data centers between now and the end of the year because of the election cycle. But I'd imagine next year, AI is the only thing that everyone's focused on I think that'll make the world more comfortable once we've decided who's going to be the next person sitting in that chair for 4 years, because that person will determine, do we have a de-escalation of tension between us and China? Will we probably end up helping push towards the resolution of two conflicts, that are taking place in Ukraine and Israel? But what's going to happen is when we have stabilization, because it's cyclical, it's going to eventually come back, right? When it does, then what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of people feel more comfortable and they're going to be retiring. And those are the people that were building these things when you were going through your internship 30 years ago.
That's right.
Like all these people that know where the bodies are buried and where the bones are buried, we need that knowledge on what we're doing, because what I wanted to do with you is it's important for people to understand how we've grown through the industry and how, I remember managed services, that part of the industry was explosive for a while, right? And then cloud kind of started taking some of the wind out of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure.
It's just the optionality. I could go wholesale, I could go retail, I could go cloud, I could go I could go on-prem. I mean, what do I want to do? What's the risk factor? What's the economic efficiencies on the CapEx, OpEx side? There's so many variables that go in these really challenging decisions. The good news is we're also left with a fairly sophisticated labor force of people that understand the space to the same extent that we do, because they've been here for more than 20 years. So they've iterated, right? What I was trying to get with you on is where do you see some of these things going? Because you've been the skipper of a couple of different ships that have been navigating through this side. And on managed services, you have to kind of handicap the IT side of infrastructure.
Yeah.
You have to know where that's evolving towards, and where I'm really my guns are only pointed on the MEP infrastructure.
Of course.
Means and methods of delivering more space, power, and cooling at the highest volume that we can. That's it. At the safest way that we could do it. That's it. All the CPUs and GPUs and all that shit, managed service providing nerds need to worry about those things. That sounds like your problem, not mine, right? But joking aside, that knowing that and that is the harder part, because now you have to play on both sides of the technology.
Yeah, right.
So where do you see that going? Do you see there being, do you see this side kind of being absorbed more by cloud, or erosion of margin or market share?
I mean, look, the erosion of margin is not on the managed services. The managed services, you're going to need it on top of the cloud or on top of...
Is it a stepping stone though?
But where it is that a lot of managed service providers were used to the drug of selling infrastructure, like pure infrastructure. And when that moved to the public cloud, the margin eroded. But the managed services that are on top, the patching, it's still the same. You need it wherever you go.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the public cloud or you're in your own data centers, right? But I think what happened is that a lot of managed service provider got caught because they hadn't evolved to a cloud model and the public cloud model, and this is essentially what I was able to do at Cadero, what I was able to do at Hostway, and when we merged Hostway, and hosting is kind of defocus them from their own infrastructure and then focus them more on using public cloud assets and then building managed services on top. So that trend is going to continue. I don't think it's going to go back to for traditional IT workloads. Now, AI changes everything, because I'm seeing the same craze that we saw in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, the craze in data center build out around AI. Essentially people building these AI specific data centers, so that people can, point their language models against. It's almost like building AI data centers versus cloud data centers that we were
Massively
building.
different.
Massively different. So I would say there's a shift in the industry. There's two things. There's the traditional IT managed service providers. That's going to keep going. It's going to get better, of course.
Will there be a
AI.
consolidation of that industry too? Do you see like big kind of always eat small a little bit and then they consolidate a little bit throughout that? We saw it on Digital Bridge has been scooping up tons of, what I'm saying? So there's always going to be that. Are you seeing that on the managed services side?
For sure. I mean, there's massive consolidation. I mean, there's 500. Like if you look at the MSP 500, there's 500 people on the MSP, on the top 500 managed service providers list. I mean, 500, that's a lot of people, right? So there has to be a lot of consolidation. And I think there's a lot of players in the field that are looking to consolidate some of these assets.
Who are some of those players? Are like the HPs will buy them, or like IBM bought Software? You know what I'm saying? Will they be big shops that buy in a bunch of the smaller ones?
I think these guys have tried their hand. They're going to be laggard. I think there's going to be consolidation within the MSP industry. So there's going to be, players that have made their bet on being AWS specialists that are seeing now that, hey, look, you have to balance it with Azure as well. So, there's going to be some mergers and acquisitions.
How do you see AI playing in all this for managed services?
100%. I mean, this is all part of it, because you're going to one of the things,
not just from a demand perspective, but from a solution perspective.
From a solution perspective, I mean, AI, you can't look at all these alerts. If you're running an MSSP, a managed security services provider, you're getting billions of alerts a year, billions of alerts. There's no human that's going to be able to, or a team of humans that are going to be able to sort through that. So you got to have AI to look for the specific nefarious signatures that are coming in through that traffic. And then those that are suspect, those will get escalated to a human to investigate. So these things kind of work hand in hand. In our industry, we have tons of data that is coming our way to properly monitor an infrastructure. And then the smart MSPs are the ones that are making full use, absolutely full use of AI and complementing their human talent, if you will.
Talk me through, actually, let me pause on that, because now I really wanted people to understand the differences between like retail co-location and managed services, and what managed services is within the facility. Because a lot of cases, a lot of the managed service providers, they co-locate out of a wholesaler, right? So some of them don't. A lot of them have their own on-prem. They host all their own infrastructure, but sometimes they outsource too.
Sure.
Right? So I think for those that are listening, I was trying to help them understand where everyone within the ecosystem kind of plays within each other. But what do you think happened last week? Was that like, you were talking about patching a few times, but what do you think happened when we had this huge outage last week? You think it was, I saw Crowdstrike was saying some stuff, Microsoft was saying some things. What's been your interpretation of that type of situation?
Sure. So a couple of things. This is a rookie mistake for sure. And it's the most mundane task. The way that the managed services industry started is, how about you let me patch your servers? Because patching is not sexy. It's not like the most, glamorous part of IT. This is just sending a patch so that, because there's a vulnerability or there's an error or whatever. So you send these patches. But the way that you do patching is you
explain to people what patching is.
Patching is actually nothing but writing a set of fixes for a problem.
It's like a Band-Aid.
A Band-Aid for the computers. Yeah, exactly. The computer is running its operating system or its software.
It's going to be updated all the time.
It's going to be updated, just like your phone updates, just like, your computer has the updates. If you don't do the updates, then the software on the computer is running an old version and is susceptible to either a breakage or a cybersecurity attack. It's subject to something that they haven't thought of whenever they designed that original software.
Yeah, it's dynamic. It's constantly iterating. So they're like, hey man, we found another blind spot. Put this patch on. Hey, we found another one. If you want to make this less likely to, or if you want to reduce the risk, use this one. And if you want to not pay for those patches or for the patches to get done because you're the low cost service provider and you have to cut some costs somewhere, it could cut you and bite you in the ass, right?
Of course. Yeah, you're running old software at that point. And then so there's a whole discipline within the IT industry, which is DevOps, right? And then, there's been a trend over the last 10 years of a lot of people that are coming from startups, especially with the software as a service kind of movement, to say, break shit and go fast. Like, test it, send it out, and if it breaks, you fix it, right?
Yep.
I mean, that all works when there's not lives.
Yeah, critical stuff hanging on the down. Yeah.
Right. I mean, last week, we had doctors not being able to perform surgeries. My daughter works at a medical clinic, and then they couldn't pull up charts of the patients. Like, they couldn't see patients.
So because of technology, they stopped life-changing events. I was looking at videos of pictures of like soldiers that weren't making it home to see their kids, being born. There was countless people that were stranded around the world. Like, people don't realize those patches make a difference, right?
Absolutely. So the idea that we did not test that patch properly is honestly a big problem. The Crowdstrike, in my humble opinion, whenever stuff like that happened to us, when I was at Rackspace, when I was at Cadero, whenever I was at Entirety Hostway, so on and so forth as CEO, look, stuff happens, there's an outage, there's a bug, stuff sometimes is our fault, but in the case of Rackspace, a car flew, that's not really
you can't account for that.
Yeah, you can't account for that. But my point in all of this is that you have to be contrite, and you have to be transparent, and you have to be genuinely contrite. You can't just like fake it, because people will see. And I just don't know that I'm seeing, frankly, the transparency that I'd like to see from CrowdStrike on this, because, this is a very basic elementary mistake. This is the lowest thing, the most basic thing that IT does, which is, create a patch, you test it on the hardware that you're going to send it to. You test it and retest it and retest it. And then look, this was a command that any, I would say entry-level QA person could have detected if they had just looked at the code. So we still don't know exactly what happened and how this got pushed. The other piece is that Microsoft now is kind of hiding behind the idea that, European regulators told them that they can't block patches, right, coming from security providers. Because Microsoft has its own software called Defender that does exactly the same thing as CrowdStrike. But the European Union, I guess, in their infinite wisdom, they said, well, you can't, kind of block patching coming from third parties, because you have your own software that's running, because that'll be anti-competitive essentially, right? And so, Microsoft is afraid of the whole antitrust stuff. So they said, okay, fine, we'll let these third-party software vendors send patches to the computers. Well, the patch that was sent by CrowdStrike, this is the problem, is that, they kept saying, well, we got to fix for it. That is not accurate. Like, the computers were blue screening. They were going through a blue screen of death. Like, the computers would boot up, they get a blue screen, and they shut down. Like, there's no backing out. Like, the only way to back out of that blue screen was to send boots on the ground, a human being with the USB.
For real, to rewrite the software?
No, not to rewrite the software, to boot off of a USB, right? I mean, this is what the fix was. The fix was, go in with a USB and then boot off of that USB, and then it's a simple command to take the effect of the patch out. At that point, but you couldn't boot the computer. The computer was going through.
So walk me through how that happened, and did it only have to happen at one place, one patch? It took down the entire globe's.
It's ridiculous. Usually when we do patching, you do it in small quantities. You do it in small, you test it on a subset. But to hit send on a Friday, well, I guess it was Thursday, and then Thursday night, I guess, and then just send it to all these computers. That's absolutely not best practice. I've never seen it before. That speaks of lack of discipline. Look, listen, I'm empathetic because I've been in those shoes before where there's human failure, but there's human failure and human failure. There's human failure where you've taken all your precautions and you still failed. There's human failure where it's something out of your control, but it's still a human that did it. But this is a little bit callous. Yeah.
So is this more prevalent now because technology itself is so much more? I mean, it's part of the lexicon. I mean, there was a time where everyone knew. How about the cloud? It's such a prevalent term. Everybody, even your mom, everybody, doesn't matter your age, it's in the cloud. No one knows what that is. I mean, we know, some people know.
Somebody else's data center.
That's all it means. It's someone else's, so you're not saving on your phone? Well, it's being saved somewhere, someone else's data center, someone else's computer. But that's all it is. And people don't understand. I think that people look at AI and they look at cloud. It's really just the tip of the iceberg. It's all they see. But they don't realize that, just like any other iceberg, a majority of the technology, the infrastructure for those two things is really below the waterline. And that part is, we're raising how much visibility this thing's getting. And I think that what we're seeing is probably there's going to be like so many parts per million in terms of, something bad or something good that you're going to get. And we're doing this so much at a much more massive scale now that are we going to see, problems with airline industries or software companies or some low service? It could be AT&T going down. I mean, like we're seeing lots of technology glitches.
For sure.
And it's because we used to think it was because of power, but it's really not that anymore.
No, it's not, because software. I mean, a lot of it is software. I mean, power is understandable. Like, it's understandable. There's science, and we understand what happens, and
Sure.
And we can fix it. If we've taken the right precautions, if we have the right spares, and so on and so forth. The problem is that with software, a lot of these software glitches can propagate, and you don't even know sometimes that you have dormant code that is somebody developed, and old code where people that wrote that code have long retired, and nobody knows how to debug that code. I mean, you got a lot of that stuff out there. And certainly when you're talking about the telco network with AT&T, I mean, there's code that was written, when you and I were.
Yeah. I went to a large managed service provider's data center a long time ago, 10, 12 years ago, whenever I was at HP. And when I was at HP, the best part of working at HP is I had so much exposure to so many other elements of technology.
Yeah.
And you're in old EDS type of data centers, stuff like that. But I remember I've walked through a couple different data centers where there's just piles of technology with they're hooked up to stuff, but no one knows what it's hooked up to.
Yeah.
And the people that built that, none of them are here anymore. They don't work here, but they're not going to unplug any of those things. And because they're not sure, like they're just layering tech on top of tech. And it's like every generation just covers up the other one with the other letter. So there's so much shift there that you have no idea what's really necessary, but it's all drawing down power.
Yeah.
There's going to be this, I think that there'll be a lot of corrections in the way that people address how they get their compute capacity, because it's going to be something that people realize has a limitation for the first time, and it's going to have to. I think a lot of people are going to change the way that they roll out their usage. Don't you agree?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is a wake-up call to a lot of people. This is definitely a wake-up call to a lot of people, because the issue is, I'm going to look, you were in the military, and your audience has a lot of military, and we're very grateful for y'all's service and for keeping us safe, and for keeping this country what it is. But here's the deal, is that patch most likely could have put people's lives in danger.
100%.
Let's say, I mean, Windows computers. I mean, how many Windows computers are in the military?
How many people couldn't do their business transactions? I know people that are like, look, we couldn't.
I mean, business transactions, fine. But in
a hospital, you can't get your technology to figure out how to have surgery.
Hospital, surgery, and military. These are the two things that I say are mission critical. Let's say this was a, at the same time, there was one of these two conflicts, something escalated, and we have a blue screen on a computer.
We could go at war. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, national security. Yeah, for sure.
This is insane. Like, so we have to be careful. This thing about move fast, break shit, and fix it doesn't work when you're talking about mission critical and life saving stuff. Me not being able to get paid with my coffee. Actually, on last Friday, I couldn't pay my coffee with a credit card. They're like, no, sir. We have to take cash. I'm like, okay, fine.
Who does that anymore?
Well, I mean, I do. I always keep cash. Always keep cash in my pocket. Yeah. Tell your audience, always keep cash in your pockets.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's true. I will tell you, like, there's a lot of cool stuff that we're talking about here. The things that we're talking about is there are changes coming, right? And we don't know exactly what those look like, but people are paying more attention to what the technology is, what it's doing in their life. I think people are understanding their usage, not just individually, like at home, Monday through Friday, on the weekends and nights, but we, the people during the day that are using technology for a living, for our professions. I think all of us are finding better ways, more efficient ways, because we see more vulnerabilities in the technology, even more than ever before, because the strain on it is growing so much more than we could ever imagine, right? So there was, having DCAC gives me access to a lot of really smart people that have great presentations. Like I was looking at a presentation that one of the future speakers at DCAC, he sent me something that he has used in a previous speech, and I get to read the market data, and it's incredible to see how much, but like knowing that this industry will triple in the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
And like, I don't know about you, but I know how hard it is to get to where we're at. I remember being in this game when 1 or 2 or 3 megs was huge. Remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Crazy times, right? But I mean, this industry now offers there are 9 different job primary domains in this industry that represent 265 different jobs just in this industry. Mm-hmm. How many people do you talk to? I mean, your son's going to go to medical school. I'm not going to say that's a bad idea, but in 20 years from now, we won't need doctors. We'll have machines that non-invasively scan you, and they're like, we'll just need a PA or a nurse to come in and give you medicine because this is what the machine says is proactive for your health, not just reactive. It's going to tell you things. Technology is going to read inside humans. We're in the 3rd industrial revolution, we mapped our genetic code. During the 4th industrial revolution, we figured out how to edit it, right? So like, what's it going to do in this 5th industrial revolution that we're sitting in right now? Technology, like, I want to hear what your thoughts are and some of the greatest changes that you've seen since we've started this industry, because I got here at the right place at the right time, right? And I kind of was watching all this stuff take place. At first, I was building hospitals and FAA towers, mission critical things. I remember when I was like, what's the mission critical industry? And they're like, if you can quantify the downtime of your IT infrastructure of 1 second by either $1 million of lost revenue or death, it's mission critical.
Yeah.
Right. And now so much more stuff that we do qualifies as that.
Sure.
Now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think that, believe it or not, I do think that technology will always have limitations, because remember, AI, all what it's doing is predicting based on the human knowledge. Yeah. Human knowledge has been accumulated through the years, right? And then, it still hallucinates, it still kind of makes mistakes. So those mistakes are going to get less and less as time goes on. But when it comes to saving lives, I still think for a long time, you're still going to have humans involved. I mean, for a very, very long time. Yes, they're going to map the genome. They're going to do a lot of these things. But, I don't think you're going to be able to make the final call without somebody just actually making sure that all of that is hunky-dory.
If this industry triples in the next 10 years, the capability of capacity of technology will triple with it, which is, it's pretty close, right? I mean, we're pretty smart. And, people talk, will the technology become sentient, right? Will it have the ability to feel? And who knows? But I would think it would be naive to assume that technology doesn't have the ability to iterate to that level, right? Based on what we're seeing, it's no, I have no idea how much time it takes, but it seems as though, like when Missy was doing DCAC years ago, right? She's a stud, and she said something that slapped everyone in the audience in the face. And she's like, we've created more data on Earth in like the last 9 months in the history of the world combined. No, it was in the last year than in the last history prior to that. And that number seems to be getting smaller every year. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we're creating more data now with generative AI. We're creating more data now in 6 months in the history of the world, right? And people don't realize that. They also don't realize, you said it's funny. I've learned that I'm not going to be careful what I say on here, but I do have no shortage of fact checkers that listen. And it's great because, people will correct me on little things. I used to say the industry was 25 years old, and I used an old number that someone had gave me and said, well, really, when we started doing this, that's when it became the industry. But someone's like, actually, when Amazon did their website and they went live, that's when the World Wide Web really took off.
Right.
And that's when we started. So let's say it's 30 years old. Fine. Do you know how long it took before the second core utility was electricity? Do you know how long it took before 25% of the US population adopted electricity in their homes?
Wow. I mean, maybe
47 years.
Wow.
It took 40 years before 1 out of 4 Americans had an automobile, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it took 27 years before they had before they put a phone in the house after it was invented.
Right.
So technology like a phone could be invented. Can you imagine not having these utilities today? Or no phone, no internet, no car, no electricity? Can you imagine?
Right.
Can you imagine where our world would be? But like, it took that long before we as a population adopted these things. Our industry's at 30 years old right now. Something's going to shift. And it's because we consumers are drawing so much. They don't realize that a single chat GBT question is the same as charging your phone 0 to 160 times. And the amount of power that draws creates so much heat. It takes that entire 16-ounce bottle of water to reject that heat. That's untenable if based on the demand scale, because I know that how many times are people, using that thing a day, times how many people. And then at some point we just realize, like, if we don't figure out this power situation,
we got to. This is going to be a limiting factor for sure.
So what's your thoughts? Where do you see we had? I mean, you've been here longer than I have.
Yeah, well, I mean, we both kind of play in this world, but look, I definitely think the challenge is going to be getting nuclear power, clean nuclear power, safe nuclear power in place fast enough to quench this thirst, because we got to do it. Like, I don't know, like, if somebody says, hey, look, there's this other solution, happy to hear it, but I can't see how solar, how wind, how
so
geothermal.
would you have put any of the companies that you were the CEO of, would you put any of them on a nuclear power plant?
Yeah.
All right. If you were at a massive volume of scale, I don't know.
Safe. I mean, if it's safe, if
absolutely. You could, you would have done it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have been worried about whatever SLAs you have to give to your clients, because there's not a guarantee. I mean, in some people's eyes, they're not sure, they fission, fusion, hydrogen, they don't have a clue what they're talking about. So some people aren't going to understand how the power that they're getting on the main side of the breaker, and then how that relates to whatever contracts they're selling with their clients, 1N, 2N, SLAs, whatever it is. But you're not worried about the reliability of that type of solution, as long as whoever is in the environment that it's in, or the authority having jurisdiction in that market, says that it's a safe energy plant, you would be willing to go.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, certainly, like, as you know, I mean, you got to get multiple power suppliers, redundancy, even in power, whether the second redundant is nuclear power, or
what do you think will be
hydroelectric, or
what do you think will be the bridge for the nuclear? Because I agree it's nuclear, but
I mean, it's not gonna. I mean,
it's natural gas, I think.
We need massive development to make it safe, and then also social. Like, you got to work on the culture, so that people, stop remembering the nuclear disasters, right, that are still floating people's minds, because we got to change the hearts and minds of people with data, with facts, and say, hey, look, there is technology that is safe, and then this is what we need, right? I mean, what are we going to do when we go to Mars? Like, when we go to Mars, like, what are we going to put up there? Like, what like how, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, what are we going to start drilling for oil, or like, what are we doing?
So I think that there's a long-term challenge that there's I think it is optics. I think it's the way it's perceived. I think that have you ever watched Nuclear Now by Oliver Stone?
I have not. No.
It's on Apple TV, Apple, whatever it is. I recommend it to everybody I talk to that has a passion to understand the dichotomy between nuclear power and nuclear weapons, because I think that, like, Greenpeace and the Sierra Club and those groups that really killed nuclear energy were really trying to kill nuclear weapons.
That's
and
right.
As a byproduct of that, they took out both. And I think even they admit today, like, hey man, we had the best of intent, but we messed this one up, because using what we're using now, fossil fuels and oil, they're realizing, like, maybe we were polluting a lot worse then. And the theory was there's so much danger in nuclear. But if you look at it, he does, like Oliver Stone, whether you like him or not, or if you agree with his stuff or not, objectively, you could look at the data that he's put together, and as a storyteller, he put together the best narrative to combat these negative optics. Yeah, it's Nuclear Now. And I tell everybody to watch it, because I mean, I've watched it 3 times just because there's such a massive volume of information in there that you kind of have to, you're not going to get it on the first try, because he's just putting out so much stuff, because you're getting locked into the fear of, like, Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island and all these other things.
Yeah, but
yeah, and if you look at it, like 3 Mile Island, it worked the way it was designed. It had a primary and a secondary backup. The backups protected the primary when it had a small leak. I mean, it's just that too many people and the pressure from the politicians to just shut down, and no one knew what they didn't know what they didn't know. They just knew that there was a soundbite or a narrative from a Jane Fonda or somebody else who hates humanity for all I know. And they said, let's do this because this is what's popular, right? So the reality is now we need to take a step back and revisit it. And we have to decide, do we want to explore this nuclear topic more to figure out how it improves society and changes society? Because I think the data center industry we grow faster than every other industry because of every other industry. Every industry's demand of technology falls back into one industry. So our industry grows as every other industry grows. And what happens is we have this thing which we have like a canary in the coal mine. We get to kind of see what's coming first. So we're the first ones to see what the capabilities and limitations of technology are. The consumer doesn't see that. We do, because we're the ones that are building the sky for the cloud and the home for AI. And we're looking at this going, man, there's just not enough. We couldn't build cloud data centers fast enough. And cloud was 10x of what the IoT was. Yeah. And now you have AI, and it's almost so monumental that people are more like, because it's just like, I'm going to go over here because that stuff seems really complicated. And then you have, the soup isn't done cooking. That's an airplane that took off from New York. It's in flight right now, and they're going to rebuild the entire flight. The airplane will have flight, and it may not go into LA, it may land in San Francisco. That's what AI is still, and people don't understand that the soup's not done cooking. It's absorbing these large language models. We're feeding it all the information that's ever been created on Earth that we digitized, and then we're trying to figure out, like, how do you keep it awake? How do you keep it from having its own dreams? How do you get it from hallucinating? Right, and now it's creating its own languages, and like, let me ask you, as a nerd, and I don't say that's with reverence. I love it. Are you worried about AI?
There's a lot of things that worry me. Yeah, I am. Like, I got to tell you something else. You asked about China in the beginning of the conversation, and we never got back to it. Do you realize that China has 70% of the world's AI patents?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes.
But
yeah.
That's horrible.
The US only has like 5,000 patents that relate to AI, generative AI and otherwise. But China has 70% of the world's patents. And, they've made a decision, centralized government pushed it down to essentially invest in AI and rally all their companies to kind of, essentially, develop defensively around AI. I get worried about that. I get worried about a centralized government taking advantage.
You should be, but I'm not. I'm worried too, but I'm not. I'll tell you why I'm not worried, but keep going.
Yeah. So I know, I'm just saying that this is one of the things that worry me. It's not the only thing, but that's just one of the things that worry me, for sure. The other thing that worries me is people putting too much stock in the responses that they get from AI when it comes to life-saving.
Like it's gospel.
This is kind of, I've played with it enough to know that it makes mistakes because all what it's doing is predicting. And, by that definition, it's a predictive model. It's not a definitive model, right? So, but anyway, yeah.
All right. So China. So I'm not as worried about China as I am about North Korea, which is a proxy of China, knowing that they have a satellite that probably crosses the United States 5 to 6 times a day. That probably is an EMP, right? So I'm worried a little bit about that. China is not a group I'm worried about from a military perspective, and I'll tell you why. This man's Navy is probably the most proficient fighting force in the world, right? Find another country that has been in more combat than America. So like, we ended the Second Industrial Revolution to start World War I, which led to Prohibition, which led to Depression, which led to World War II, which led to Korea, which led to Vietnam. And then after Vietnam in 1969, we started the Third Industrial Revolution. But think what we've done since then. We took nuclear weapons, which were the genesis and created in the middle of those industrial revolutions, and we figured out how to turn it into energy, right? And there's a lot of cool things that take place. I think if you look at how far we've advanced from technology, we were in all those wars I just covered, including Vietnam, and then we went into all the Gulf Wars, and we have the most proficient fighting force in the world. When's the last time China's been in war? right? What's their military look like? What do those patents look like, right? So if we look at each industrial revolution, let's start with the turbine. The first one was the motor gen, or was the cotton gin, right? In the first industrial revolution, as well as the steam engine, which led to the locomotive train, which transformed society by changing the West. You know, how many people didn't have to use the Portland Trail to get out there and died on their way, and now they're literally taking the train there. That was a piece of technology, of power that we created in the first industrial revolution in America, and it was a gift to the world. And in the second industrial revolution, we took a combustion engine that was designed in another nation, and we created an automobile out of it. And then we figured out how to manufacture the automobile, streamline it, and then create a work week around it, and then build unions around labor to protect that. Because every industrial revolution it giveth with one hand and taketh with the other. There's always an unintended consequence, like urbanization, pollution. When you put all those many people together, you're going to have diseases. What that leads to more shots, more inoculations, more vaccinations. Like, we were learning how to do things as we were going. When we, in the second industrial revolution, created the Colt revolver, I don't think society would know how much of a pain in the ass that has been, right? But I mean, how many people have been saved from it? How many people that would have been victims? I mean, the same argument is made with social media. How many people have been bullied or harmed from it? How many people have used it to become healthier and stronger, right? So the reason why our industry has all these whipsawing back and forth is because we're not like the legal institution or the medical institution of those industries, because they have governance based on ethics, and we have a lot of people that have been in this industry for 30 years. And when they begin to sunset, they should become policymakers for industry, because this is the wild, wild west. The only way for us to standardize and streamline is to create a healthier relationship with the authorities having jurisdiction over us in each market relative to power, at least, right? So we are struggling there. And I think that if you look at each industrial revolution, in the second one, you know, I'm telling you all the things that we did there with the automobile and AC and DC power, you're welcome, that came from America. The third, between AI, AR, VR, you know, all the things that we started creating, putting people on the moon, we've released a lot of amazing technologies. But when we get in like the third and the fourth, we're really talking about the creation of Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. Where do they all come from? They come from America as well. So if you look at what these industrial revolutions have done, America has transformed humanity with the things that we've done. And I think that although I'm worried about the propaganda that I have to read regarding China, I could tell you, if you take a JTAC in the Air Force or one of those forward combat controllers, those individuals by themselves that can control the entire sky, which is their weapon. There's not a person in China that knows how to probably do that to the level of our military. And that's just a basic example of how talented we are. But this is what I tell a lot of people today. We're not at war right now with anybody, in fact, which is pretty nice, right? Now is the conversation that we have that goes from combat to cloud, right? We're creating this narrative that makes it easier for people to understand what is relevant in this world today with regards to technology. And that is, like, I'm partnering up with all kinds of tough guys that are really amazing soldiers, sailors, and airmen, veterans that have done a lot to improve, you know, the war on terror, do a lot to protect America. But right now, like, I'm recruiting people as much as I can to join the military. And if you're in the military, I would hope to see them retain their services there, because they're trained on the most advanced weapons and machinery and technology in the world. Right. Because I'm getting ready to do a documentary about the birth of this industry. And one of the guys that's doing it with me is Mike Sorelli, former Navy SEAL commander, SEAL Team 6, SOCOM. And he's our modern day Leonidas. He hosts the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior podcast today. He's going to come at it from the national security perspective. Sure. How does technology impact the future wars that we won't have? What if we're at war right now? We're at World War III right now, but from a technology basis alone, is that cool enough to where we don't have to send people in harm's way? We're still going to need a strong military, but our military is an incubator for technology that protects society. We should be sending our kids there as plan A instead of colleges, which how much stuff will they start learning, not in medical school, but in other forms of education in which what they started learning their freshman year is already obsolete by their fourth year. For sure. So like people should be getting more into crafts and the trades because
100%.
AI is not replacing the
I agree.
If you got in a car accident last week and you need body work, do you think AI is going to fix that? Not a chance, right? Oh, you need a plumber? That ain't going to be AI.
Good luck.
You need an electrician? AI is not going to fix that problem, right?
Absolutely. Now AI can help, but it's not going to fix it.
It's going to tell you how to.
Who's going to put the plug? Who's going to wire? Who's going to pull the cables? Who's going to lay the foundation? Who's
craftsman, tradesman.
This is tradesman. Absolutely, 100%. We are definitely, as a society, we have gone so far onto all these useless degrees. I mean, look at this. Look at the unemployment. Look at the unemployment. Look at the unemployment rate. Like all these people come in. I mean, if I'm helping as many people as I humanly possibly can, but there's only so much you can help. You can see these degrees that are useless, that they've gone to school and gotten, not that the degree makes the person, it's like, look, just go learn how to be an electrician. Go learn how to be work with metal.
The only reason I have 2 kids in college. And so as I'm sitting here shitting on why they go to college. Well, so I'm not shitting on college, but I don't send them there to learn. Hold on. They learn from us. They learn from their, they're there to be educated. Whatever they're being educated or certified or validated to is completely separate. But they're at school to learn how to live without mom and dad, learn how to hold themselves accountable to a schedule. Kind of like if they treat school like they should, which would be like a job, then it's conditioning them to be able to show up to work on time on Mondays and work all the way through Friday, right? They're learning how to function through, their own logistics and economics, which you're trying to develop coping skills. That's an age between 18 and 24 years. You want your kids to developing coping skills so they're not dependent on mom and dad so much. But I mean, the only thing that they get with the degree at the school that they go to is the network that they have, the social dynamic and chemistry of coming around from that. Because I have 2 kids in college. I talk to their friends. A lot of them have these degrees that I didn't even know existed. And I'm like, how come people just don't get like something simple? Like go get a business degree and go, that's a homogenous, that's universal, transcends all industry. The function of economics is the same for the person that has a paint company than it is the person that has a different services company or makes a widget. You need to understand a P&L.
100%.
So go learn basic things or learn a craft. Learn a craft, something you do with your hands.
If you don't know what to do, just go learn a craft. 100%. We got to bring back apprenticeships. We got to bring back all these things that, and I honestly blame high schools as well for that, and parents, both high schools and parents. Like high schools need to have a path to apprenticeship for.
So watch this. So I'll bring it all around the horn because the problems of society and my business, your businesses, we're not incubators for society's problems, so we have to deal with them within our companies. I think the technology stacks that we're building will create a better technology solution that allows people to grow more aware. They're going to have the aperture in how they view their life, their world, or that problem as a whole gets a lot wider because of the greatness that they get from technology. Yeah. They could learn so much more through technology and because of technology. Technology now allows me to filter through all the media that I ever see, right? So now I know exactly who I need to listen to and where I'm getting unfiltered content from. So, I mean, corporate media, Main Street media, all that shit's going away. I got to tell you, like, there are some major moguls on podcasts, and I feed a healthy, steady diet of podcasts my direction. And there's one guy that I watch all the time, and he's one of the top 10 in the world. He's one of the top in the world. Hasn't even done one thing to talk about the attempted assassination of our president, right? Or our former president, right? So like, I'm learning that even some of these podcasters, they're just bought and paid for now. They're just corporate themselves. Like they're
getting censored. Yeah.
Well, no, that's bullshit. A lot of these people started these podcasts to help people. Now they make so much money. They don't give a shit about helping people. They just don't want to stop the flow of money. And we can see that too. And that's the one thing that technology makes it easier and most transparent for us. We get to see now what people's true intent is more. And with that, we get to decide for ourselves whether or not we want to vote for them or follow them or support them. And I think that's what technology is doing. It's starting at a macro level at the federal government side as we're watching more things that people used to be able to get away with a lot easier. It's less likely for them to be able to get away from it because technology is in the right hands of certain people and it's exposing these challenges. And eventually, we're going to have a better, healthier check and balance. Like I said, when we rolled out when technology in the form of a rolled cigarette was rolled out, people didn't understand what that impact was going to be on society. Now they put a skull and crossbones on every packet because they definitely know that it's always too hot and then too cold before it's just right. I believe in the Goldilocks model for every aspect of technology.
Sure, yeah.
So I think I'm not worried about China as much as you are, because I don't think people in China want to be at war with people here. I think that their government has concerns about our government, and there's going to be a continuous war that exists at that level. And I hope it always stays at that level.
Yeah.
Where it's just a bunch of nerds behind computers trying to figure out how to block the other groups out.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think technology will go back to analog in some respects, because we can't allow ourselves to put so much national security IT at risk to having someone. The reason why patches are nonstop, because there's always someone that's trying to beat a system that's out there. So there's someone that has to patch the system and then roll it out to make sure everyone's protected. But there's constant threats and penetrations to every aspect and element of technology.
Yeah.
Never will that end.
Yeah.
So at some point, there's those defenders for that. And because it's going to be dynamic, it'll never be static. It'll never stop growing. The minute that it stops growing or you stop patching, we see what happens. We see the ripple effect of that. We consumers, we've all been slighted from flights now as a result of IT, right? Not because of weather. And, when you're standing there because you're getting hailed on, or it's a blizzard.
That's different.
But when you're like, some nerd didn't want to do the patch, and now I'm going to stay here in Brussels for another day, worst places to stay. But does that make sense? Like, technology is going to be something that was once just an awesome luxury. Now we're going to have much higher demands of what we expect from it.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally agree. And for the record, I'm with you on China. I'm not necessarily worried about them. I'm just talking about the, this race, this insatiable race.
We always win.
Yeah.
In each industrial revolution, we've won, is what I'm saying. And we're winning now.
Yeah.
Like, they could have as many patents as they want if they don't have the right ones. They could have 10 more Facebooks if they don't have Meta. If they have 10 more search engines if they don't have Google. Like, I still think that we stay one, and that may be my arrogance. I do love America, but I think that Americans want to win.
Yeah.
We want to win.
Our system. Well, because also it's a better system. It's a system that's based on freedom. It's a system that's based on the right kind of diversity of thoughts, of exchange of ideas, and you're not afraid that hopefully we're not afraid that somebody's going to come in and just going to yank us out of this room because we said the wrong thing on this podcast. Like, I
don't think so.
Yeah. But you are, if you're in China, like,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like, in China, like, we wouldn't be able to have a free flowing conversation like this, so,
that's scary.
That's the difference. That's the difference. A lot of these totalitarian, countries, I worry about them controlling, some of these things, because, we are an open society. And then some people take advantage of us being an open society, if you know what I'm saying. So yeah.
I think the same technology that's given us these problems is the same technology that's going to help us find the solutions. I always say you're in technology. I'm technically in technology, but the primary line of business I used to generate revenue wasn't space, power, and cooling and connectivity and services. It's a human being. And it turns out they all think differently, and they all have their own emotional responses and ranges. And I have to kind of create an environment that has, with a very loose construct that allows people to be themselves within that, and I think that people are going to start growing more into, I think that people will have a healthier and more harmonious relationship with all their technology and how they engage with everyone else in their life because of that technology.
For sure.
So I'm more optimistic. I'm not worried about AI. I'm clearly worried about the technology's capabilities. And I do believe that there's a lot of, pardon my French, it's a technical term, pieces of shit that we're writing code for AI that they hate humanity. If you look at some of the markets in which technology people sit that write this code, and you look at the neighborhoods around them, it's like a zombie apocalypse town because they don't care. I mean, I've literally seen the media put out reports that from doctors and journalists who will write stories about how the only problem with this planet is that the people, there needs to be less people, right? So you have people like this that are sitting in Silicon Valley who are like, I hate America, but let's write a code that says, that's my fear about AI. But I also feel that every generation, every industrial revolution has been at the brink of where we feel we are now. I mean, like, if you go back in time in history, yes, we've had a former president just attempted, and we have lots of weird things that take place. Go back in time, people remember their history. I mean, like, people don't remember who President Buchanan was, do you?
No.
He was the president before Lincoln.
Yeah.
That's the dumbass that took us into the Civil War, and then someone else got us out of it, right? But like, there's always shitheads, and this country has always endured. And in every industrial revolution, which we just started the 5th, there's always been something crazy. Right. And every generation's like, oh my God, this is horrible and the whole world's going to end. I'm sure they thought that in the Cold War when we were putting people, they got Sputnik. Can you imagine the world was going to end? It's never not been like that. And what I'm saying is, like, we're still here. The world keeps spinning. And even if you have a problem like allegedly Crowdstrike did or whatever, the world kept spinning, and most people didn't even talk about it the following day. They got back on the next plane, they were back on track, and it's over. But that's how fast
for sure
things take place. And I think that what we'll see is people using technology. The problems that I solve is found in the product that I provide, which is a human being. My purpose as a business is to stop people from hurting themselves. Giving them great jobs in this industry is the only way to do it. I think the technology that we're building is what's going to lead to, I think the AI that we're building too will lead to technology that we will be able to use to help ourselves and help humanity and help society. So that's why I'm eager to build the Sky for the Cloud and the Home for AI. I love this industry. I mean, man, I know you're not out of this game. You got another, however much, I mean, you could play in this space as long as you want to. But
I love it.
We just started the gold rush, right? So
for sure.
So to that end, what are you doing? You consulting now?
Yeah, I'm just doing a little consulting. It's been, a whole 10 days that I've been in a sabbatical. So it's been fun, but I've been helping some companies kind of figure it out. And I started this consulting gig called Profit Growth Insights, where we go in and help C-levels, kind of figure out, what they need to optimize in their business.
So it's more business focused, or is it focused on this industry?
It's focused on this industry for business. Like if they're having a churn issue, if they're having a cost issue, if they're having a growth issue, like a go-to-market growth issues, how to find new markets, how to, kind of spruce up their go-to-market efforts, or how to optimize their operations. So yeah, it's been fun. I'm just gonna take my time and figure out what I want to do next.
Stay close to the industry.
Oh, for sure, 100%. Yeah, I'm gonna be. Yeah, this is.
It's a fun time to be in the game.
This is fun. Yeah.
What is your prediction for what are you predicting for the end of this year? Anything specific in technology, good or bad? Do you see anything happen in the next few years? What are you reading? Because I know I read a lot.
I think it's going to be all good. I think we're gonna have to solve the power issue that we talked about, and we're gonna have to have fundamental discussions. And this is kind of like what you said.
How do we solve the power problem?
I mean, you mentioned something very important, which is we haven't done really a good job lobbying the federal government, and we're totally busy making money. Yeah,
we're trying to be treated like the NFL, but we're still like. Yeah. We're a dodgeball team.
Yeah,
right?
we don't have any unified lobbying group. There's the I2 coalition, but they're kind of more lobbying on other things other than the stuff that we're talking about here. But there has to be a lobbying effort where we sit down and we just educate. I remember during the days of the I2 coalition, whenever we started, I went and briefed Senator Cornyn here. And we met with him, with his staff, and every time I'd go to Washington, D.C., I'd run into him actually on the Southwest Airlines.
I've seen him a few times.
Multiple times. Yeah.
Former military.
Southwest Airlines, always.
Same with Ted Cruz. You see him in Southwest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And always, in the A1 to 5, so. Long story short, yeah, I mean, we got to do something similar because, and I don't think the senators here in Texas are going to be the issue, but certainly, we have a lot of Congress, a lot of people in the House that need education.
I think that they need a group, we need our own, and they exist. We have within this industry so many like underground fight clubs that exist of pockets of pioneers and luminaries and leaders that all kind of coalesce together on their own little pockets. They're the ones that I think will be the ones that started this industry 30, 40 years ago, or the ones that are one day sunset and hopefully go become the policymakers of governance.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that implement the ethics that we need to take. Until we have that, until we could start reducing the unintended consequences, we can't just be in, like fast food did it. We just put it out there and figured out what's up. And then what it did lead to was a health movement, which created a whole nother health industry where billions of dollars are spent on Tough Mudders and gym memberships and home workout equipment. And that all came as a byproduct of people not waking up one day and realizing that the American diet, which is atrocious and from a processed food perspective, is making us sick, and we have to do things to make us healthy again. So let's make more money so we can afford both, right? And I think that you'll see like there's this cycle taking place, I think, where people are we will as an industry we'll start measuring twice before we cut.
Yeah.
Versus just throw it out there and see what happens. Just throw that, like, hey, just give everyone the World Wide Web. What could go wrong, right? Okay, so people are going to be very good. Or there's going to be an underground and a lot of things bad. All right, well, let's just give them apps then. Let's turn into an application-based society. Screw World Wide Web. Let's use apps. All right, well, hold on. I didn't realize that app was going to make it easier for them to break the law or hurt themselves. But it's too hot.
And get addicted. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Get addicted. Look at the kids. I mean, they're like, yeah.
There's all these studies, all the scientists that left the tobacco industry and went to fast food and processed foods. And now they're like, okay, we'll get an algorithm. You know, you have all these people that are just figuring out, how do I make a product that people want more of? And we as consumers are going to be like, we didn't know that was your guys' plans, but now we have access to all of this information that really shows you. Like, now people are reading bags more than ever and be like, dude, there's 33 grams of fiber in this. Did you know this? And like, no one cared what was in this stuff before. Yeah, I bought it from the store. It has to be good. But like, we're all getting better at things. I think that technology is what gives us more visibility. I always tell people that technology it's like a time machine. Think about it like this, and I'll leave this was the last part, and then I'll give you last word as we bring this podcast home. But when you came to the States in 86, shortly after that, did you ever hear of a TV show called All in the Family?
Yeah.
So anybody that's my age or older, All in the Family had a guy named Archie Bunker, crusty old guy.
Yeah.
He was everything about that show would never be. They could never put.
You can never put it anymore. Yeah,
it's like the Blazing Saddles. They could never make that movie now. That TV show could never be made now. Archie Bunker was. How old do you think he was?
Probably 40.
He's 48.
Yeah,
but I'm 48. We didn't look anything alike, right? But that's because technology has made it easier for me to understand how to maintain my health better. And that's just the difference of one generation, right? So like, technology has unintended consequences and really shitty byproducts. And over the course of time, that volume will reduce. You know, like, tobacco companies had to get really smart with how they did things when we started regulating that stuff. They don't get to say whatever they want to anymore. There's no more asthma cigarettes just for those people, you know. We've always absorbed and adopted technology faster than it's ever, one, been profitable, or two, known to be good for us. That may not change, but our world is growing so fast that there's no option but change.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and this is actually what I do, you know, kind of helping companies kind of look around the corners, you know, to kind of figure out what their strategy should be, how to figure out what the market trends are, what are customers needing, you know, what are these big icebergs that they can hit along the way, and then where are the big, you know, gold mines that they need to go pursue. And, you know, this is essentially where I'm spending a lot of my time. And then, you know, certainly technology, especially AI technology, is going to be a major step function that, you know, our generation hasn't seen anything like it since the advent of the World Wide Web. I truly believe that, because I see all the signs of the step function that we saw whenever the internet happened, you know, whenever the first time you figured out that you can send an email right? I mean, like, this is what's happening right now.
I think that was that was a crazy moment in time when the population started. It's 13 years. I think it was 13 years before 1/4 of the U.S. population started using the World Wide Web.
That's right.
Can you imagine if they got a hold of that a little bit sooner, or like just the changes that have taken place as a byproduct of how long people hold on to things before they really starts bringing value? How quickly, like, I think before the internet, before email, you know, what was probably the most profound impact to society before that? Was it the automobile? Was it the car? I mean, was it the phone? Okay. Was it the mobile phone?
I would say electricity, phone,
what phone? Mobile phone? There's a difference between mobile phones and smartphones too, right? So,
I mean mobile phone was okay, but I mean, I think we understood the concept of
smartphones took 7 years, because 27 years for a regular phone, 13 for the other, you know what I'm saying? And we were like, all right, this seems to be on the right path. We started, look, if you look at the adoption rate of technology from those technologies alone, take it back into the applications. It took 4.5 years, I think it is, for Instagram got 100 million users. No, 4.5 years, I think was Spotify. I think 3 years was Instagram, and I could be off. Someone will police me on this. But if you look back, I mean, it took TikTok 9 months.
Yeah.
Took ChatGPT 5 days. So technologies as they roll out are adopted way faster. And the best part about that is the faster we adopt it, the faster we learn about it. And the faster we learn about it, the faster we can determine if it's healthy or not. The faster we determine if it's healthy or not is the faster we could pivot away from it. And the amount of time that we've had it is a part of our fabric of society. It takes almost that long before we could break that habit as society. So that's why you see, I mean, you don't see nearly as many smokers as your grandparents' generation, where every movie was nothing but smoking, right? Now you don't see as many of those things, and you don't see many people run around with, the cheeseburgers all the time and stuff, because people are like, look, it's an affordable luxury. I may have it when I'm younger or something, but I'm not as like, do you get what I'm saying? There's certain things you're going to see shifting. And I think this is among it. I think that you'll see people becoming more knowledgeable of what they're doing and how they impact the technology that they use, because it all comes full circle. We're the same. We, the consumers, now are the ones driving eyeball content, video caching, and cloud demand, right? So we will also be the ones. I think Gen Z will be the ones that kind of fix it. I hate the baby boomer generation. They kind of ruined it, right? We're trying to fix it now. But I think Gen Z will probably be the ones. They were born and raised with technology in their hands from the jump. Yeah. They're the first ones that are going to probably be like, hey, hold my Zima. I'm going to fix this, right? We're going to have to bring back Zima. It's the only way to fix this problem.
There you go. Yeah, Zima.
Well, how do people get a hold of you, right? Because you're out on the game, you're taking a little bit of break and just doing some consulting between gigs.
Just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm Emil Sayegh, E-M-I-L-E. Last name is S-A-Y-E-G-H, or you can hit me up on Twitter, eSayegh.
Or they can hit me.
Huh?
Hit me if they can't. If they can't find you, find me.
Yeah, or you can go to my website, like I said, Profit Growth Insights, profitgrowthinsights.com. So
you gonna write a book?
Yeah. I'm going to write a book.
Are you?
Yeah, not right now. I'm going to do my next big move here pretty soon. Nice. But I'm just going to, right now, like I told you, 4 kids, we're helping them move to college, helping them do this, and spending, I want to spend the fall hunting.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
Me too.
So, we should do that together.
Look,
by the way.
I just got an invite the other day. I haven't hunted I've gone on like 2 hunts.
Yeah.
And since I started this company in 2019, because
I remember
your first 5 years are just like, everyone tells you, like, you're not going to make money. You're just going to learn everything you can. And your first 5 years I've loved it. I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary, and I got all the scars to prove it. I mean,
that's awesome.
Building something, you've done this.
Oh yeah.
It's addictive, right?
It is addictive.
I love building this thing, and I love this industry. I love what we're doing. I get to help amazing people. I get to work with the most amazing people too. So, but I love
doing
this
a lot of good, my friend. A lot of good, and thank you and to your entire team for your service to America and for keeping us safe and keeping our freedoms, and then for the service that you're doing for the industry right now. Not many people can make these 2 claims at the same time. So you guys are helping advance the cause right now, and then you guys have gotten us to where we are. So yeah.
Well, it's pioneers like you, right? So I've known of you for a long time. I've known you for a bit, since then. I remember the first time I met you, and it's an honor to call you a friend. Thanks for joining. Thanks for taking my call when I invite you to come be a part of things. Course, I appreciate it. And I want your voice around here, right? So thanks for breaking down what happened last week or 2 weeks ago, however long it was, with that whole thing. Because you just kind of see a little bit of pointing fingers going back and forth. And to most people, it's common enough to where it's not a shock. Yeah. It's obviously, it's not convenient, but it's not something that, we're immune to or we're not used to by now, right? So I think that understanding why this is going, like, I wanted to draw this out because there's parents that are going to be listening to this, and I want them to think about alternatives for their kids and realize, like, this industry is the greatest industry you could park your kid.
Agreed.
In the future. I mean, if they're not going to go to be doctors and surgeons and stuff like that, they got to come do what we're doing, because
100%. Yeah.
This will be
not everybody's called for the same thing. This is why, there's a big diversity, big range of skill sets and God-given talents that people need to kind of take to their full. You can make as much money being an electrician and a plumber than you can as a doctor, like, or an engineer, or,
There's electricians that are making more than some doctors in some places.
For sure. That's
right?
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. My thing is this, I was asking you, the last question was, how do we solve the problem for power? And I think that it is, we have to appeal to more of the younger generation, Gen Zs, but I think that we have to make it cool, right? I think that right now the brain capacity of that generation is focused too much on trying to be at Tesla or SpaceX or something else in Google. And the reality is there's a lot of talent that's already there. I'm not saying that soup is done cooking, because they still reinvent themselves too, but you're not going to move the needle there as much as you can in some places where I'm like, go in the military and learn nuclear power, and then come into this industry and help us change this industry from a nuclear perspective. Join the military, join the trades, but we need to recruit more parents to go get more kids to look at this industry as a long-term solution for their careers. I don't know how to do that, but I need help, right? So over the course of these podcasts, hopefully I bring on enough guests that somebody could resonate with these people that are listening to where they go, and encourage your kids to go look at an alternative path to just traditional college, unless you're getting them there for the same reason I am, which is to get them out of your hair for 4 years to go learn how to party and figure out how to build a network.
Nobody wants that. Yeah.
But I'm like,
yeah,
if you want to go start your career now, you can make a big difference now, right? Just go and get your head in the game and start learning these topics. But I don't think we're going to solve the nuclear problem with the talent that we have today. We need to recruit younger talent that has a lot more energy. They're going to approach it much more creatively. And it's almost like, if you give the kid the challenge, you can almost see them take the binoculars and flip them the other way and be like, oh, I see it now. They're just going to look at it differently than us, because we've been in the inside looking at it for so long. They're on the outside looking in. We need more visibility. We need more people. We need more talent. We need people with those types of brains to park their talent over in this space. Until we take this sport mainstream, we're not going to be able to recruit against these kids with big fat brains that want to go into institutional lending or banking, or they're going to go where they think the money's at. And reality is the money's here.
Yeah.
So is the opportunity.
For sure. And then look at last Friday as well. When the computer stopped working, people needed to learn how to operate without the help of technology.
They survived.
I did a TV interview last week. People called me and was like, wow, quick, we need somebody who knows what happened. I'm like, look, here, what's your advice? I'm like, look, I can give you all the advice in the world about proper patching and this and that and all the protocols, but this stuff is going to keep happening. And then we can't forget how to do stuff with our hands.
Sure.
We can't just, we can't forget how to, skin an animal and then, I
think those crafts and those trades,
we got to learn, we got to keep that alive with our kids. My advice is that help your kids learn how to garden, how to butcher an animal, how to grow food, how to, change a tire, how to, fix a car, how to tinker, because not everything is going to be as a service, when technology breaks. And, that doesn't mean that we can't rely on technology. Absolutely. But don't forget what's made us great as human beings, right? So, yeah.
We were doing really cool things before all this technology came along, right? We'll be doing a lot of cool things even as we figure out what the right balance is. I think the Goldilocks model will apply for us individually as consumers and technology. I've already done it. There's plenty of times where, my phone gets parked in a completely different room before I sleep now. There was a time in which that never happened, right? I was like, what if, but I mean, I think that a lot of people are leaving their phones there and going away for Saturday, come back that night. I mean, we're getting more comfortable not needing it so much. And these little blips that we have remind us that we could live without it every now and then, so it's an interesting time to be in the game. Don't you agree?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. This is a great time. Absolutely great time, exciting time. And it's just beginning. Like I said, we're just taking that step, and it's going to be a big.
I can't wait. Something big's going to happen soon.
Yeah.
I think in this space, I get to kind of watch a lot of things percolating at once. So there's just too much now, to stop the momentum. So there's going to be something that has a tipping point, and one day we will all register this industry just like we do any other utility, I think. And one day we'll be talking about the statistics. Did you know that it took 30 years before data centers were mainstream?
Yeah.
And now 75% of the world population is either working directly in the data center industry, or they're working in an adjacent industry that functions in orbit of that industry. And that's the truth, right? The other 30 to 40% of industry will be farming and stuff we do with our hands.
Yeah.
But everybody else will be working in this industry in some capacity,
yeah.
I think.
In some capacity, right? Because there's a cottage industry around it as well. You know, the people, the truck drivers that bring the servers. There's
when Henry Ford built a car, he didn't build a car. He built a manufacturing process that you could streamline that transformed society. He built an entire secondary economy based on an ecosystem that included multiple companies that were responsible for building tires and multiple companies that had to build brake pads and windshield wiper. You know, there's a whole economy just for the automotive industry.
Right.
And that's what Henry Ford built. And I think that we are currently today living amongst the Henry Fords of our industry. And I bet you anything that once we become more mainstream, we will one day look back where I was asking you, like, was it email? Was it the phones? Was it the automobile? You know, what had the greatest last impact on humanity? And I believe this industry will have a greater impact on humanity than the automobile, because this industry has the capability of transforming our society from our economy's basis from natural gas and fossil fuels to a nuclear platform, which will have the greatest impact on climate change that we've ever seen, right? And I do think that it'll create more jobs that are going to be, you know, I saw the CEO JP Morgan Chase like a month ago posted something where he's predicting that like Gen Z's kids, by the time that they're old enough to join the workforce, technology may have enabled them to only have to work a 3-day work week. And by then, technology itself may have the capabilities allowing them to live to be 150 years old. You can buy age with technology, which again probably takes money. But I was meeting with a person that works for a company that with a single drop of your DNA, they could map your genetic code and tell you exactly what your lung cavity should look like. So if they had to recreate one, they may have the material soon enough to be able to recreate a replica of your lung cavity that they could put into your body when your lungs give out. And that is like a cyborg, you know, thing. But I mean, that's what technology may one day have the ability to do it. We see it happening on the knees. I have a brother that's had both his knees replaced. There's technology and hardware inside of those knees, but it's going to continue to move all throughout the body until at some point it extends our life, right? I'm optimistic on technology.
Oh, same. Yeah.
I'm very much aware of the negative that could come, but there's always shit like that. I mean, you go back at every industrial revolution, you look at every moment of time, you're never going to find a generation that doesn't think and feel like we do now.
Right.
It's just when we were 18, we didn't feel like we do at 48. Now the way the optics and how I view the world are different. My awareness and knowledge of the world is different, which is why I'm like, but when you're 18, you're oblivious to that. You know, you don't even think about 19.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're living in awesome times. This is a great space. This conversation was fun.
Oh my goodness. It's awesome.
It's great to hang out with you again.
Absolutely.
We got to go hunt.
Same here. Yeah.
Let's go shoot something. Thanks for joining the revolution.
For sure.